What if you could solve intelligence? Like the whole thing, not just one piece of it, but the entire puzzle. Well, that was the absolutely audacious goal of a small startup out of London called DeepMind. This is their story, a story of secret obsessions, seemingly impossible challenges, and breakthroughs that are already changing our world. Now that quote, that's not some reporter hyping things up. That's Demis Hassabis, the co-founder of DeepMind, trying to explain the technology he's building. From the very beginning, this team knew they weren't just making a new app or a cool gadget. They believed they were about to unleash a totally new force on humanity. And that force has a name, artificial general intelligence, or AGI. You know, the AI on your phone is really good at one or two things, but that's it. AGI is the dream of something different, a single, flexible intelligence that can learn pretty much anything a human can. This wasn't just a side project for DeepMind. It was their North Star, the single obsession that drove every decision they made. Okay, so where does a story like this even begin? Well, it starts with a shared secret, really. An idea that was, let's just say, not very popular at the time. You have to remember, back in the early 2000s, AI was almost a dirty word in serious academic circles. The field had gone through so many AI winters, so many overhyped promises that led to nothing. If you said you were working on AI, people kind of rolled their eyes. But Demis Hassabis and Shane Legg, they were completely obsessed with it. They truly believed it was the most important mission anyone could be working on. And this right here, this is the motivation behind it all. As a kid, Demis was a chess prodigy. He'd sit in these huge halls with hundreds of other brilliant minds, all of their brain power focused on a 64 square board. And after one marathon 10-hour match, it hit him. What a waste. What if you could take all that collective intelligence and aim it at a real problem, like curing cancer? So for him, it was never just about building a thinking machine. It was about building the ultimate tool to solve everything else. But can you imagine trying to get money for an idea like that? You walk into a venture capitalist's office and they're looking for the next photo sharing app, right? Something with a clear product, a quick path to profit. And Demis walks in and basically says, we're going to solve intelligence. It might not even work, but if it does, it'll be the biggest thing in human history. I mean, it broke every single rule of a startup pitch. Somehow, they actually got some funding, mostly from people who just thought the whole thing sounded incredibly cool. But now came the hard part. They had to prove this wasn't just a science fiction fantasy. They needed a sandbox, a place to test out the very first sparks of a general intelligence. And that testing ground? Old school Atari video games. Now you might be thinking, video games? Really? But it was brilliant. See, games are these perfect little controlled worlds. They have a clear goal, get the high score, but winning requires all kinds of flexible, creative strategies. It was the perfect place to see if one single algorithm could teach itself to master dozens of different tasks. And that, right there, is the core idea of general intelligence. But the real magic wasn't what it learned, it was how. Their system, called DQN, wasn't given any instructions. None. It started completely blind, just like you would if you'd never seen the game before. It only saw the pixels on the screen and the score. And then, through endless trial and error, what researchers call reinforcement learning, it started to figure things out. Every time an action made the score go up, it got a little digital pat on the back. And after playing millions and millions of games, it went from being clueless to being better than any human. And then came the moment that made everyone's jaw drop. It was with the game Breakout. The AI had already learned to play like an expert, but the team just let it keep playing overnight. And when they came back, it had discovered a strategy no human had ever taught it. It figured out how to dig a tunnel up one side of the wall and send the ball bouncing around in the back, racking up an insane score. This wasn't just learning rules, this was true emergent creativity. So they'd conquered Atari, but that was just the warm-up. Now DeepMind aimed for the final boss of strategy games, something so ridiculously complex that experts thought it would take another decade for an AI to crack, the ancient game of Go. Just to put the challenge of Go into perspective, this number on the screen, that's roughly how many possible board positions there are in a game. It's a 1 followed by 170 zeros. That is a number bigger than the number of atoms in the known universe. Let that sink in. You can't beat Go with brute force like you can with chess. It takes intuition, a feel for the game. For AI researchers, it was the ultimate peak to climb. So in 2016, the stage is set. DeepMind system AlphaGo faces off against the world champion, the legend Lee Sedol. And in the second game, it happens. Move 37. AlphaGo makes a move so strange, so alien, that the human commentators thought it was a mistake, a glitch. But it wasn't. It was beautiful and utterly creative. Later, the DeepMind team calculated that the odds of a human master ever playing that specific move were about 1 in 10,000. Look, this was so much bigger than just winning a game. It became a global event. Here in the West, we saw it as this incredible tech demo. But in Asia, where Go is a deep cultural touchstone, it was a profound shock to the system. People have called it an AI Sputnik moment. The event that woke the world up and kicked off the global race for AI dominance that we're living in today. But remember that thought Demis Hassabis had as a kid? Games were never the real point. They were just the training ground. Now, with the whole world watching, it was time to point this powerful new intelligence at a massive, real-world scientific problem. So you've done it. You built an AI that can beat the best human at the most complex game ever invented. What in the world do you do for an encore? Well, if you're DeepMind, you go after a problem that had been stumping biologists for 50 years. It's called the protein folding problem. Proteins are basically the tiny machines that run everything in our bodies, but predicting their complex 3D shape from their DNA sequence was an insanely hard problem. In 2018, DeepMind took a shot at it with a system called AlphaFold, and they won the big competition. But there was a catch. The results weren't quite accurate enough to actually be useful for scientists. So what did they do? They threw the whole thing out and started over from scratch for the 2020 competition. And when they came back in 2020, wow, the guy who founded the whole competition sent an email to the team that basically said, it's over. You did it. After half a century of work by thousands of scientists, DeepMind had, for all practical purposes, solved the protein folding problem. It was a historic moment for science. But maybe the most amazing part is what they did next. They didn't lock this powerful technology away. They didn't sell it to the highest bidder. They used AlphaFold to predict the structure of pretty much every known protein on the planet. We're talking over 200 million of them. And then they just gave it away, for free, to the entire world. A gift to humanity that's already turbocharging drug discovery and scientific research. So, from this secret obsession in a London office to cracking one of biology's greatest mysteries, the journey has been absolutely incredible. But it also brings us to some very heavy, very important questions about the future we are all now stepping into. You know that old Silicon Valley motto, right? Move fast and break things. Well, DeepMind's philosophy has always been the complete opposite. Because when you're building something as powerful as AGI, breaking things could have unimaginable consequences. As Demis himself says, with this kind of technology, you simply can't afford to fix things after they're already broken. And that's why you hear these really serious comparisons, people putting the creation of AGI on the same level as the Manhattan Project. Not because it's a weapon, but because, like nuclear power, it's a completely new kind of force being unleashed on the world, one that could reshape everything, for better or for worse. So here's the real takeaway. The people on the front lines, the ones actually building this technology, they've stopped wondering if AGI is possible. Their big worry now is that it's coming faster than we as a society are preparing for. The story of DeepMind started out as a thinking game, but it's now our shared reality, and it leaves all of us with one simple, massive question. Are we ready for what comes next?